What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Trick 10s. Today, we're starting on a new project. Obviously, you can see we've got this gigantic Tracker Grizzly 2072. It's a 2011 model. I've actually never seen one with this colorway on it. And it's got like a rhino liner truck bed lining on the interior of it. It's a pretty cool boat. It does have some issues. It needs some work just to fix up the hull. The thing has some cracks in the floor bracing. It's like a lot of trackers that I see, they're notorious for this. So we're gonna have to weld a lot of the cracks up, get this thing fixed up right before we start adding any new framework or doing anything to the boat, period. So we're down here in my other shop. This shop has high ceilings and lots of room in here. And this is a gigantic boat. This thing has an 8-foot beam on it. We're gonna have to flip it over on its side because a lot of those cracks in the bottom, they actually run through to the bottom of the hull. I want to get a good repair job on this thing. I want to make sure that it's ready to go before we start framing it out. It's going to be a pretty big build. I do have some good news to share with you guys. Austin is back in town for about a week and a half. He's in between jobs and he's looking to make some extra cash. And this is the perfect project for him. And I'm glad that he had the time to come back right now because I could really use his help. I'm going to turn this camera around. I'm going to give you guys a walkthrough of this boat and show you what we're going to do with it. And we'll get right into it. Let's get back to work. All right, so check this thing out. It's pretty cool. I've actually never seen one with this blue logo and with the white coloring on it. It's definitely the first time for me. Apparently, they made these for a couple of years like this. I just never come across one. This one does have these step pods welded on here. These are factory also. And he has a 115 horsepower outboard motor he's going to be putting on here. It's actually a lot newer than the boat, and he just took it off just so that we could work on it. But he went ahead and cut out, these big storage compartments on either side, just so he can get in here and dig this foam out. Because originally, this boat only had this one area right here, and it actually stopped right here. So that was all the access you had to get in here, and that's where his batteries and stuff were at. And it had a center console in it, and obviously it had a deck up here. You can see where he cut this deck out too, all the way across here. And basically, he just did that so that he could dig all this foam out of here, because it was kind of silly the way it was set up. I mean, it's just a gigantic deck with one little hatch in it. And then the only other storage you had is back here, and that's basically full of batteries. And he had a center console, had a little bit of storage underneath it. But I mean, this is a 20-foot boat that's 8 foot across the beam, and you only have one storage compartment underneath this console. So kind of stupid the way it's set up, but the way we're going to set this thing up is going to be a whole lot better. We're going to get into that in just a second, but first we got to fix up these ribs. Now these trackers, they don't have these braces that come up the sides of the gunnels. It's one thing they don't do in these Grizzlies. They rely on all this framework that's in the floor, and that's great, but in the same sense, it ends up having a lot of cracks down here, and I think a lot of that is just to do with the way that this stuff is constructed. But you can take a look down here. Let's see. All these tabs, kind of weird the way they do this. They just turn back like a ½ inch on them, and then they just press them down to the floor and they weld them. Well, a lot of these are cracked. You can see we got some cracks right here. This thing's cracked. That one's cracked. Same thing all the way across right there. It's got a couple other decent cracks. This whole front piece right here, I don't know if this was cracked or this happened when he was removing this deck, but we're going to repair that. I haven't actually found any of the cracks that are in the bottom that he says go through to the bottom of the hull, but he says there are some. And if he says there are, we got to make sure that we fix those up before we start framing this thing out. So either way, I'm going to bring my welder down here and we'll go ahead and get started welding up all the spots that we can see. And I'll probably just grab it with the forklift on the side and just pick it up so I can stand it up. That way I can inspect the whole bottom of this boat, because I definitely want to make sure that this thing is right. This is a gigantic boat, and once I start framing it, I don't want to have to take it back off the trailer again. Let's get back to work. All right, so we got it flipped up on the side, and it definitely has some cracks up underneath the hull. This one right here is one that he marked. You can see it, typical tracker stuff. They're from the ribs inside being welded, and just puts a lot of pressure on the bottom of this hole. There's another crack right there. That one's kind of suspect. We'll probably hit that one up too, but a couple other spots. This one is pretty decent. It almost looks like a scratch, but it's definitely cracked right there. A couple more down here. We're gonna get this thing fixed up, look over it real good, roll up all these spots, and then we're gonna put this thing back on the trailer, take it down the other stop, start framing it out. Look at this guy. He's back. I hope you have this welder so we can get going. Let's get back to work. All right, so we got all of the spots welded up. We need to weld up a bunch of little spots down here where transducer cables and stuff were hooked up. We did do some welding inside of there. Obviously, we did a bunch on the bottom of the hull, and we did a lot inside of here. All of these welds, all these braces are welded across here on the inside, and literally half of them were broken, at least on one side, if not both sides, across the center section right here. I can't get up underneath of this to see if this stuff is still welded good, but we came back and tacked a couple of these pieces down. You can see we welded that one and this one. A lot of welding went into this, and it's really a shame that that many of those floor braces are broken off, but that's what happens. Once you get one crack somewhere, then it starts to move and change the way the boat rides and handles, and then it puts pressure on something else, then you get a crack here, and then you get a crack here, and so on and so forth. And next thing you know, you got something like this. Honestly, I counted up roughly how many spots we had to repair, and including everything in here and under the bottom, we're over 60 welds. That's a lot. I mean, this is a lot more than I was anticipating it to be. This took us about 8 hours to just get it to the stage we're at right now. I think I'm probably gonna come back and add something in between these two pieces right here. Now, the original deck was obviously way back here, and this is well past that. But I think that we need to connect these two together because that one was broke all the way through and the material is just oxidized. So I'm gonna attach that down to this rib right here and across that one and back to that side. I think that'll help strengthen this up because this center one does not actually attach to this square piece. This little rounded hat section piece is just right here, and it was split right here too, so we had to repair that. But now that we've got the hole where we need it to be so we can start building, I did take a couple measurements, and you can see this mark right here. This is where I'm gonna start his console. Now this is 3 foot from this back bench right here. He's gonna have a little drop down bench with his captain's chairs 3 chairs across here or 2 chairs and a center console. Then we're gonna start the console right here. That's basically gonna be a dual console. And I figured this is gonna run back up about 2 feet because obviously it's gonna slope up at an angle and then come back and come down the face of it. So about 2 feet in there, that'll give them a decent amount of leg room. And then our deck is gonna pick up from here and it's gonna go all the way up there. So he's gonna have a little bit over 10-foot deck. It's gonna be a pretty good sized deck. So it's gonna be pretty sweet. And then in between the 2 consoles, we're gonna have a step. So have like a step up to get in here. It's gonna be pretty cool. We're gonna start doing some framing in here and try to get this thing to the point where we can figure out some hatch sizes up in this front deck. Let's get back to work. All right, so Austin just put this piece in the floor down here. He added those 2 pieces in between it, and then he added a piece of tubing across there. That's just to help strengthen this front up a little bit. Now I'm gonna start laying out this deck. And in order to make this whole deck streamlined, I've got to get something up here as a starting point that I can frame back off of. And unfortunately, the way this guy cut this out, it's kind of making a little bit more work for me. I want to share this with you. If you are going to cut the front deck out of your boat, do yourself a favor. Don't cut it all the way up here like this. Come back at least 3 inches. That way you have a good point to start your deck from. Because right now, that material he cut off, I'm basically gonna have to add back on. And it's gonna be a lot weaker because it's not gonna be a solid piece welded to this. I'm gonna have a piece that's gonna turn up and come back about 3 inches. It's an angle. And in order to do that, I've got to grind all of this off of here. Now I am gonna have to grind all of these big welds and stuff where he cut it off the sides, just because the way these trackers are made, you know, the original deck sits down here and it has a flange up that's welded across here. So obviously I got to grind all this off anyways. I knew that because my deck's going to sit down here in order to be streamlined and flush with the back. But if you are going to cut your entire front deck out, that's fine. But just make sure that you leave about 3 inches here. All you got to do is cut it right here. Then you'll have a good platform, because what I'm going to do is put that angle up there. Then I'm going to come back up underneath of that angle with a piece of 1x3 tubing, shoot some rivets through it. I'm going to weld it. I'm going to run those 2 long tubes, a rectangular tubing back. That's going to be my hatches right in the center. Then I'll frame out for hatches on either side of that. But that's going to be my main support tubes. They're going to run down the center there. Just something to think about, guys. You're going to cut through your front deck. Save yourself some trouble later on. Let's get back to work. So there's your front deck. This thing is humongous. Comes out 10 foot, 2 inches all the way across here. And the way we set this up, it's gonna have a 14 by 54 inch drop-in rod locker on this side hatch, mirror image over here. And then these hatches are all 16 by 32 wide. and he's got 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. This first one's gonna be a live well. He's gonna have 2 storage compartments right behind that. And then up front, we've got his seat pedestal base mount. And then in front of that's where his recessed foot pedal tray is gonna go. So it's gonna be sick. And that area up there where the foot pedal tray goes, that's a lot longer than a foot pedal tray. So we can move that forward or backwards. It's probably gonna be pushed all the way up. That'll give us about 10 inches from the center of that pole to the edge of the foot pedal tray. That's about what you wanna have. But this is a humongous area up here on this front. It's gonna be sick. Now that that's all done, I'm gonna pull this deck out. I just got it tacked in here with these 2 vertical uprights, but we're gonna cut them out and we can just take this thing and slide it back. It's got a couple of rivets up into the front brace we put in there. We'll slide it all the way back, turn it on its side, pull it out. And then we're gonna weld this thing solid, top and bottom, inside and out. Majority of all this tubing is 1x3 by 1/16 tubing. Now a couple of pieces I did make out of 1/8 inch thick. This piece in the front, this is a 0.125 thickness, and the piece up there on either side of this seat pedestal base, I made that out of 1/8 thickness. And then I made these 2 long runners out of 1/8 thickness, just because I want those to be strong. And I'm gonna come back off of these long runners right here. I'm gonna run my vertical supports off of those because they're thicker. And I want that cross brace in there to be strong because they're gonna have bolts going through it. And this 1/16 tubing, it'll kind of suck in if you tighten up the bolts into it too tight because it's just super thin. But as far as framing and stuff, it's perfect. All the frames around the hatches are made out of 1/16. I did use a couple pieces of 2x1, 1/16 tubing up in here. And obviously this stuff is all just tacked together. So we're gonna come back and put a couple of better welds on this just to hold it and then pull it out. And we'll weld the whole thing from the back side. But all in all, this thing turned out sick. I mean, we did all of this in 1 day. So far, I've got 2 days invested into this boat. And we've already repaired the entire floor framing, welds up underneath of it, welds in the back bench area. So we've done a lot to it. And then this is basically what we did today. I mean, all of this, everything you see right here was done today. Austin was a huge help because he knows how I'm doing this. He can kind of think ahead of me. And not only that, but I can cut, he can tack, he can cut and tack, and then this thing just comes together twice as fast. But it turned out really sick. This is an elite deck, and this thing is going to be super lightweight, yet still very, very strong. All right, so the boat is coming together quick, man. That's a lot of work to do in 2 days. Austin and I have been grinding on this project. We're trying to get this thing wrapped up. Now with that front deck frame all finished up like that, that will keep him busy for a while. On Monday, he's gonna be able to just weld both sides of that. We got all the hatches in that front deck figured out so he can make all those. While he's doing that, I'm gonna be designing the consoles that are going in here. Now he wants to have a dual console, one on either side. I'm gonna talk to him about that because I'd really like to take this side and bring this back a little bit. The way we could throw a longer rod locker in here because this whole deck is 10 foot 2 inches in the center. But once you get off to the side, it cuts down to about 8 feet 2, and that's rolled up way high in the front. So he's not gonna be able to fit 8-foot rods in there. I'd like to bring this thing back another foot and then kick it back at a 45. He would have to do away with his console, but it would look really sick if we did that. We'll see what he wants to do with it though. But I've got my work cut out for me, and I'm at a good stage of the game right now. I'm gonna wrap this video up right here, guys. I appreciate y'all watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. If any of y'all live local to Galax, Virginia, or want some work like this done, Austin is looking to do this type of work. He's starting his own thing out there and he needs some clientele. I'm gonna leave a link in the description of this video for Austin's Instagram page. You can go on there and send him a message if you're interested in getting any work done. I'm telling you, the dude knows his stuff, and once he gets one project going, it's just gonna take off from there. I appreciate you guys watching. Hit that like, subscribe button. Leave a comment, guys. Let me know what you think about this build. This thing is huge. It's gonna be sick when it's done. I'll see you guys next time. I gotta get back to work.